your aim would be to modernize NAFTA to include new provisions to address intellectual property rights, among others. So can you tell me, how do you intend to ensure that any modifications to NAFTA continue to promote U.S. innovative industries such as the biopharmaceutical sector?
Well, thank you, Senator. As I said before, this is a very high priority. I know that not only from discussions with you, Senator, but with almost every member of the committee has brought this up as a high priority. We know what standards we ought to have. We also know that there are deficiencies with respect to Canada and Mexico in the intellectual property protection area. And this goes across the board. I mean, it's copyrights, it's patents, it's trademarks, there are problems in a variety of areas. On the other hand, we do have systems that are not incompatible, and our hope really is that we will end up with a model agreement in this area, and that we will get the two countries to agree.
In this regard, are you going to be seeking to include strong intellectual property and market access chapters that reflect the standard found in U.S. law and recent U.S. trade agreements?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Does the March draft notice still represent the administration's position on labor obligations in NAFTA?
Yes, sir.
So how, if at all, do your objectives improve upon the commitments we got from Canada and Mexico in TPP?
Well, in the first place, there are more key labor international agreements that the three of us agreed to than that all the parties in TPP agreed to. So my hope is, in the first place, we can expand it. In the second place, we have to find a mechanism to make it enforceable, like every other provision in this agreement. My hope, based on very preliminary discussions, is that we're going to be able to make real headway in this area. Mm-hmm. Our view certainly is that it's a huge benefit to the United States if there are higher labor standards in Mexico. It just makes us more competitive, and it's good for them and it's good for us. And the impression I have is that the Mexican authorities agree with that position. Mm-hmm.
So let me ask you, maybe you can give me a simple yes or no to these next two questions as we try to move through a series of things here. Would you agree that improving the labor provisions in NAFTA is critical? I think you just referred to it in a sense, to the long-term success of the agreement and to ensure that American workers see more of the benefits of trade?
Yes, I absolutely believe that.
Do you also agree that the existing provisions in the NAFTA labor side agreement should be retained and strengthened?
They certainly should be strengthened, for sure.
Okay. Let me ask you this final question in this vein. Can you commit to us that any new agreement you negotiate will build upon each of these principles already included in the NAFTA labor annex and not take a step backward by narrowing the scope of labor rights protected under the agreement?
Yes.
Okay. And then finally, I had agreed as a member of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee that the President's efforts to try to get China to affect North Korea's behavior was a good process. But having heard the President come to the conclusion that it hasn't worked out, do you believe that, from your conversations, that the administration is going to reconsider some of the punitive trade measures the President called for during the campaign as it relates to China? Because my understanding is he was going to give China some consideration if they ultimately affected North Korea's behavior, but certainly that hasn't seemed to come to pass. There's some talk about the possibility of another underground nuclear explosion while we have visitors here. So the question is that now back on the table?
Well, Senator, in the first place, I'm not involved in the President's discussions or decisions about North Korea or China or any of that. I would say we have a serious, comprehensive economic dialogue that's going on with China. We also have a review at USTR of whether or not there are enforcement actions that should be taken against China on a variety of things. Intellectual property is a classic example, which I know is so important to the members of this committee. And that process, our process at USTR, is going forward just as it has. When we're in a position where we think we have an enforcement action, we expect to go to the administration and go ultimately to the president and have him make a decision on that. So I have no idea what the president's view is about the relationship between China and North Korea. I kind of view that as, you know,
well, whether it's because of that,
Pardon me?
it's because of that, or the fact is that, from my perspective, China's eating our lunch. I hope we're going to take some aggressive actions as it relates to some of these provisions that we should be enforcing, which has been a constant refrain of
Time
mine.
is up. Senator Isaacson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ambassador, I'll be brief because I have to run to another meeting, but there's one subject that Mr. Carper reminded me of a minute ago that I've got to bring up, and that's chickens.